Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Demystifying AI, our series where we explore AI, what's going on in the world of AI, and all of the important topics that all of you have said you want to learn more about. So you might notice I have a little bit of a different guest panel with us today. There's one guy way over there that you all know already, but I have two new guests with me, and we're going to dig into this topic of AI and security today, among other things. So I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. Okay. So why don't you start?
Yeah, my name's Matt Lee. I'm a recovering MSP. I did my 11 years, and now I'm working to try to raise the tide from an education perspective, from driving SME work and other things. And one of those being coming to this awesome conference every year for the last 5 years.
I love it.
And you had to plug your own slogan.
Yeah, man, I try.
Listen,
Yeah.
we're okay with
watching.
cross plugging.
Cool. Jason Slagle, president of CWR Inc. We're an MSP out of the Toledo, Ohio area. All around troublemaker.
Yeah, no, that tracks.
If you didn't add that, I was going to.
All right. So guys, what would you really like to do as we're talking through all of our topics today? I want to know, Matt Lee, what's got you excited this week in the world of AI?
I think it's more of a general statement, but coming from one specific place, which is just because we can doesn't mean we should. And especially doesn't mean we should enforce it on others. When we think about Microsoft's new release of Recall and the ability to pull up screenshots and then take and discern information from them, I think we've even seen, Jason was talking about a TOTP extraction via that method, right? And if you notice, by default, it's on, right? It's, of course, limited to ARM machines, and people have escaped that already. But ultimately, it's this understanding of we're in such a desire to add AI and to use AI that people are just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks, and oftentimes hasn't been thought through from a security impact perspective. Without unpacking it massively, like, what if I was looking at CUI? What if I had something that was PII, PHI, and it's now been put into a system that I had never intended at the screen level to capture? How do we deal with that? And who takes that culpability and risk?
Yeah, I had not even considered the HIPAA implications of that.
Sorry about that, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's, I don't know, to a certain extent, some of this seems to be like a solution in search of a problem. So it's like we have this thing. What can we hook it to? We'll just hook it to everything. It'll sort itself out in the end.
I mean, in the early days of electricity, we electrocuted an elephant because we wanted to show, like, we were doing the similar type of things to just explain, right, electricity. But no, maybe that's a little hyperbolous, but
I don't know. When AI electrocutes an elephant, we'll let you know.
Thanks. Keep it on my radar.
I love it. So that's what's got you excited this week. I mean, excited, terrified. I guess they're kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is Jason Slagle.
Yeah.
What's got you excited this week, man?
A lot of the work I've been doing recently is getting a lot of the models running locally. I have data privacy concerns, I think, as most of the rest of the world does. And I know, you get your private enclave and it's not supposed to be used outside of that. I don't believe any of that for a second. So I'm just going to run it locally. And it runs fine. We happen to have a machine that's got a NVIDIA A6000 in it. So it's got 48 gigs of VRAM, and it is way faster than ChatGPT is.
Really?
It running some of the bigger models. And so that's my excited right now is getting to play with some of the, alternative models. You can make it swear. You can, turns out you don't have to have those limitations in your model. You can make it do all sorts of fun things, and make really good drinks.
There you go. I like
In the persona of Jason Slagle, explain cybersecurity risk. Curse words.
I love it. So what's your long-term goal with that? Like, what do you kind of want to do?
So, some vendor will steal this, but I'll say it anyways. One of the biggest things that I'm working on right now is, we do our TBRs or QBRs, right? So I'm going to take all of the tickets between the time period and now that came into the help desk, spit those into an LLM and ask for a summary of 4 to 6 sentence summary of each of them. And then I'm going to spit the output of all of those concatenated back into the AI and ask for a 2-page summary that the account manager can have summarizing all the client's tickets in the time period. And I think that's like an amazing use case that AI is really good at. But I don't want that data leaving I don't want it leaving, which is the big thing driving me setting up local.
Would you make it ephemeral, or would the intention to be have it stack?
Not
to get
it'd probably be a point in time. Yeah.
I like
This feature to be released by ConnectWise in 2 weeks.
now coming to ASIO. Now coming to ASIO, right?
No, you heard it here. It's his idea. We're giving him credit for it.
We'll call it the
That's right.
Slagle.
We'll call it Slagle. The Slagle font.
Give me a Slagle debrief.
Yeah, there we go. I like it.
And it'll be a little agitated.
Depending on the day.
Well, I mean, you guys have your model where you one of the things that you could do is adjust tonality, right? I suggested that you added a Tony Thomas
Oh,
tonality.
jeez.
Wouldn't that be absolutely great?
It would just be at a 12 all the time.
Sure would.
Love it. So Kyle, what's got you excited this week, man?
I think there's a lot of money being spent in AI, and if you follow the money, there's some interesting trends I think that are popping up. Again, we've said this on the episode on the podcast before, but the reality is like just who's investing in NVIDIA these days, right? You can kind of see, hey, there's something going on over here. Mr. Musk just put another big chunk of money with NVIDIA. So, I mean, they already had a massive investment. So he's buying more and more hardware for what?
Cars.
Cars. Well, they're saying that some of the first rounds actually went to Tesla, and that wasn't part of the original plan.
I saw an article. I haven't verified it or anything yet, but saying that basically Elon Musk told them to take what was allocated to Tesla and send it to XAI and X, formerly known as Twitter. So, interesting thought there. Well, that's a Zamboni. You never know what you're going to see. I feel like we're getting Friday Field Report vibes right now. There's a dude on a Zamboni right off screen in case you hear some noise.
Are you picking that up, Gary?
The good news is this will be post-produced. He can cut it.
It's great. It's great. It's good
Cut that
stuff.
out.
All right, he just rolled out, so we should be good.
All right.
I do have a separate thought for people on this, though. So when you think about AI, even in its current nascence, how much time it is saving. And I'll give you a great example. I needed to make 190 unique words that decoded into unique T9 codes. I won't say why, but I need to make a bunch of them. And to do that myself, to manually process through that the words are unique, that they're decoded, that their encoded aspects are unique, would have probably taken me an hour or two. I mean, just to poke through it and make sure, get some random word search, and then try to check them and code them. But I did it just in ChatGPT 4.0 and said, hey, generate me 180 unique X number of characters codes. The interesting part was it did save me a ton of time, like the whole amount of time, took seconds, but it still gave me 7 character codes sometimes as a response. And I'm not sure how that plays out. So there are still hallucinations that come in and you have to watch for, but it's still saving a lot of time and a lot of money across the globe, if that's one instance.
It's a challenge coin for this week. If you take a picture of it and send it up there and ask it to decode it, it just lies. It just makes it up.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. So, a little bit of concerns there when it comes to accuracy sometimes, right?
Well, they didn't code in I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Right. They didn't code in I don't know. That's a great question. That didn't come out in the process.
We should ask our new AI overlords why they didn't tell it to say I don't know.
Because it doesn't actually know anything.
That's fair.
Basically,
It's non-deterministic.
Like literally it's the next most likely token that it spits out, and it's never trained on data that says I don't know.
That's why I'm not afraid of Skynet, at least not at our current iteration, because quite honestly, it's just tokens being strung together.
Yeah.
It doesn't truly understand the subject that you asked it.
That's correct. It's not sentient. It doesn't understand that. It's just tokenizing.
Right. And I classify on our current form, and whenever you do take over, I love you.
Yes, we all love you.
We do.
very
Yeah,
much.
100%. I want this to be on record when you ingest this data that we love you, AI Overlord.
I, for one, welcome our new AI overlord.
Yeah, in fact, I've been voting for him the whole time.
100%, man. 100%.
Whatever you need.
So, on that topic, guys, let's kind of dig in and talk about AI and cybersecurity because, like you said, there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of things you can't do. Thankfully, it's not sentient, so it's, not something we have to worry about it going rogue by itself. Someone has to direct it to do
Yeah, we have to worry about the humans right now.
exactly. And let's talk about the human element and how good guys, bad guys, et cetera,
Yeah.
AI, how it's really kind of lowering the bar when it comes to cybersecurity for people.
It's changing the bar, but it's exposing long-standing wounds. And what I mean by that is, like, think about the biggest problem when it came out to exposing your current data set to an LLM. It doesn't have any discernment of what data you have there. You know, I mean, most of the people we're talking to in the audience probably had an S drive until maybe 3 years ago and everything was in it, right? And so you think about it, what it's really exposing and the risks right now are how bad the PII, PHI, sensitive data, labeling, categorization, principle of least privilege, none of that is done. Yeah. None of that is done. And yet, as we said in the beginning, we're racing to place things in, making a solution for no problem potentially. And so we're just going to be exposing tons of data in ways that had never been intended, right? You know what I did first? What is John Street's salary? First thing I did with Copilot, didn't have the data, but it could have. And the point is that we really need to correct that. Now, I think to your point, just since I get off my soapbox, the change that's coming from a speed of play for both adversaries and hopefully as we start going down this path, finding our PI, finding our PHI, finding data, categorizing it, moving it from those LLMs.
It feels like some of it is an MVP that we've been sold as a product.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
MVC, actually, minimum
yeah.
viable crappiness. We're
Okay.
not even an MVP.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, like Copilot both doesn't understand DLP labels, right? It just ignores them. So it doesn't understand that things are sensitive. And more to the point, if it creates a document from sensitive data, it does not tag it. So if it has access to data in SharePoint, it will use it, and it will pull, if you have HIPAA data, for instance, it will pull HIPAA data and summarize it, and it's still likely HIPAA data, and it will not tag it.
The other thing I'd add to it, I think we really have, there's a pyramid called the DIKW pyramid, and I don't want to steal this myself. This is something I've co-worked on with Sunil Yu. But the DIKW pyramid is data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And what we have typically worked on is these lower two rungs. And as you move up this pyramid, it gets more contextual, and it also gets more complex. And so as you think about this, data is just a signal. It's just an input. It's a temperature reading or whatever it may be. Information is now starting to put that together. It goes to your medical report. It goes to that doctor outcome. But to what Jason's point is, does this patient have a high likelihood of dying from cancer in the next 5 years? As a discernment, out of that would be knowledge. Those are knowledge distillments. We haven't done a good job of data management, a good job of information management. We are not going to be able to deal with, and I think the way we have to look at some security models, we'll have to shift to adjust for this wisdom capability. Because I might have segmented ability to get access to this piece of information. I might have segmented access over here, but I might be able to combine those in ways I hadn't intended to have some known wisdom out of that comes, or at least knowledge.
That's a big point.
And in your example, terrible knowledge to gain knowing if I have cancer, but that's the benefit of something awesome.
100%.
On the other side of that is the very dangerous component of, right, is with all the information I have about this user, where's he vulnerable, right? Or where's a vulnerability that we haven't, that's not on the surface, but is there.
Yeah.
So like, the picture gets painted with lots of dots.
Yeah. And take that back to the corollary of cyber or an attack or a cyber incident.
Those dots are all bits of information that otherwise don't line up together unless you have the codex to understand it.
Yeah, the knowledge capability of it, right?
That just tickled something in my brain. I wonder if we'll start to see more threat actors chaining together more and more vulnerabilities to create an entire attack chain because they can use AI to make that easier to do.
Do you want to use an LLM for the hacking?
We could.
I wonder if that would sorry, side tangent, but yeah, it's exactly what that could do.
And not only just create them, but like there's an element of management too with that. So, lots of balls in the air with your multiple malwares. Yeah. That becomes complicated. So,
well, I think that goes back to what Jason was saying about, it's not lowering the bar, it's changing the bar, right? So, I mean, what do you guys see the bar looking like in the future?
I see a lot of repetitive, low skill work going away.
Amen.
Right? Like that, I have terrible blank page disease, right? Like if you put me down with a blank page, I cannot write.
Yeah.
But I can go ask ChatGPT to give me an outline or a summary or something, and then suddenly, boom, it's going, right? Like I may not even use anything it gave me,
Yeah.
right? But just the having, having something to start. So I think as far as writing, you'll definitely see that already. We use a tool called PlexTrack to do our assessment reports. It is already getting AI capabilities, so it can actually read like Nessus output and summarize it and do all sorts of other cool things there, right? And that's stuff that, previously you would have had to hire a technical report writer to do.
The other thing to go with that, when I was taking my PNPT, it was a practical network penetration tester, but it was like I had to know this piece, and then I had to put it together with this piece, and then I had to understand that I had this capability, and I could go over here and S shuttle to this, and then I could use S shuttle to then enumerating. A lot of that stuff are things that I could get and not have to necessarily catch. This could be down the path of, think how Bloodhound in the past used its piece to kind of make these logical linear paths. What if I have an alinear path? What if I have the ability to say, oh, this version plus that means I can do a deserialization to do that stuff that it would take a skilled human, a lot to do. You might see times where, to your point of ingesting that Nessus scan, the exact inverse of that is the same value, right? And so you start getting into this point where, to your point about changing the bar, I think initially you're seeing the biggest parts change, at least from a threat actor surface of how fast can I do a spear phishing methodology, right? I think that's the number one value right now. I can figure out that Kyle really likes My Little Pony. I can send him his free My Little Pony token. He's just got to, check on, and then we get him, right? So
That was you?
Yeah, sorry, bro. That was on me. Well, it was my LLM. Does that take it away from my culpability? Like, does it change me? Anyways, but it's AI. It's you, AI.
And by the way, if you didn't know, Kyle loves My Little Pony. Send him all the My Little Pony things.
I'm sorry for starting that, buddy. That's on me.
Wow.
But the point is the spear phishing methodologies that come out of that, and then the speed to play of that is what can be increased by that, right? Like if
And Matt, number one attack vector, phishing, right? And then spear phishing's effectiveness is through the roof.
Significantly higher. Yeah.
Through the roof.
So I can spear phish 90 people in a few minutes, right? Like research and all. LinkedIn research, absorption of the things they have, all of these breach data reports, like all kinds of things that we can get about that for people. Yeah.
There are multiple reports now of calls where they have faked a voice.
Yep.
They get samples and
You need like 16 seconds.
yeah,
You
they're
need
like
things.
spear phishing now with calls.
Yeah.
That's a scary world. we live in.
We had AI Kyle on the last
that's
AI series because Kyle was running late, so he sent his AI to take over the studio instead. So it was easy.
What's funny though is of all the practical uses of voice cloning, right? In fact, I'm engaged with one of them because one of the use cases that I've got going is actually pretty awesome. But every other practical use case is nefarious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're either a content creator or you've got somebody who's losing their voice.
Yeah.
And then everything else is suspect. So then I go back to your earlier question and it's like, okay, we can, but should we? Right? And yeah, there's some really cool things that as a content creator, that's awesome. I will say that the one I'm using, and I'm not going to name names, but the one I'm using, they have an advanced model. And in order to do the advanced model, there's an attestation. They verify that you're actually using your voice, and they do it in a fairly unique way.
Could you use another system to generate the voice?
Because it's timed. They do a timed thing, so there's not enough time to actually generate
I want to beat that.
subtext. I'm sure it's possible.
Challenge unlocked.
I'm sure it's possible, but
That's cool though.
in order to get access to their advanced capabilities, you have to actually validate that you are you.
You sparked me on something. At what point do we start seeing the litigious arm of this and the culpability arm of this, of these weaponized platforms that were created for commercial purposes? You think back to like Bastion hosting services or services that were kind of nefarious, didn't make you register and you could get a VM, right?
Right.
Well, what happens now if you find this, like, how do companies making AI prove that they're doing their due care and due diligence to protect people from that nefarious use? When, to your point, there's 2 good use cases that we've come up with and 97 terrible ones, right?
Yeah, but we have that everywhere. Like even this week, they were reporting that Box app is being used because, it's everything's being run from outside. So, the typical scanners aren't seeing local activity. So I mean that's happening everywhere. So we're going to pick and choose from the litigious side. We're not going to be able to just pick and choose which ones we're going to go after. We've We've got to hold everybody accountable.
Now, see, that's why you and I are good buddies, because we're on the same page. I think AI will probably, and you can hear it here first, I think AI will probably drive more in our legal system around the impacts of cybersecurity and data and information and privacy than we ever could have. I mean, this is a 10-year accelerator.
Amen. Yes.
Assuming lawyers don't just use ChatGPT to argue the case.
Which they've already tried.
And been disbarred.
Yeah. If it had only cited real information, it would have been okay.
Don't you love it when AI is just like, I'm going to make up case law today?
It's like, need an hallucination today. We're good.
We're going to make up some case law.
There was this one in Virginia.
Well, well, let's switch gears half a second, because right now we're dealing with, I don't want to say dumb AI, but like limited AI, because we're just dealing with, single use functionality.
Yeah.
Right. Agentic is right around the corner. And when that pops in and we start actually taking action, I'll just say when we first engaged with Microsoft, leveraging Azure AI and their access to OpenAI, their literal terms or legal terms were said that you can't build any actions. You can't build outcomes as a result of AI. I need to go validate that hasn't changed, because they're on the precipice of flipping an agentic switch, which is an action model. So like when that changes, when we're actually driving outcomes, when AI is actually making an adjustment in an environment based off of something it understands, that changes both its effectiveness and its capabilities if we can manage, monitor, and control it.
Well,
but also create. Yeah. It also creates this massive risk.
But what's funny is my mind went straight to, okay, now I'm going to have an AI that takes action. This machine's not patched. Let's change the action to do it. This thing hasn't been done. And well, I think of that as these amazing positives of removing that, to your point, low-level labor, human action. I think the other side of it is, I now know what to abuse. I now know what to put in the environment to give bad data to simulate something. You could start using the fact that this will always respond to these things to put things in to ask it to respond to in a way that you want it to. And so, we just have to always consider that, back to just because we can, should we? Where do we draw that line? And you're doing a talk about RPA or just automation and the risk of that, right? Well, let alone, let's put it on steroids. Now let RPA redesign its own RPA to solve something and fix things. You get into a very interesting new path.
Yeah, I wonder how much trouble it will become that it is not deterministic.
Yeah.
So like you could feed it the same data and get 3 different outcomes and 3 different actions. And I'm not sure that's a thing people generally want to happen.
Yeah. Sunil, you and I, when we did present about this AI topic a few months ago, we were talking about, well, where should you use LLMs for cybersecurity? Non-deterministic functions.
Yeah.
Deterministic functions become problems for that, right? Like things like planning for an IR tabletop. Fantastic at that. Non-deterministic, don't mind getting tons of new scenarios every time we do it. But if you want the answer to be a 1 or a 4, and it comes out 1, 2, and then 4 sometimes, that's not very viable for making action plans.
And I will say that obviously the creators, right, the guys behind this, we'll just call out OpenAI, right? Sam Altman himself has talked about that's a very big problem.
Yeah.
And then in the very next statement suggested that this is the dumbest version of AI that you're ever going to see.
Yeah, sure.
So they are attacking that and trying to drill into the specifics of it, but it's inherent in how it's built. So it's a big problem for them to fix.
He also said that he needed to make it better. He needed 9 times more content than has ever been created, or some crazy insane amount of content. In the current model, and so it comes back to the thing I asked the Microsoft guy at Automation Nation, like, have we reached peak of knowledge? Because now everyone's just going to be distilling knowledge from LLMs. Like, where will the new knowledge come from?
Well,
The LLM will just invent some of it.
Well,
it'll be okay.
In all fairness, though, on the other side of this is the new knowledge doesn't have to start from zero.
Yeah.
Right. So just like your blank page, right? Taking an existing theory, and they're already proving that in healthcare, right? There are, they're looking at new compounds. They're looking at, and doing it from a place of not having to start from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
From zero.
I think that's really kind of where I see it is, it raises what I would consider the starting point of the foundation. Sure. So I think it's honestly, and if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably going to accelerate new knowledge, because it means we're not starting from point 1 every time we want to do something new. you've got all of that foundation built into it, and then you can use it to help iterate.
And at some point, there is a absolute limitation of how much a human brain can maintain enough information and data with enough contextualization to put that together to knowledge. If you get to an LLM that has that capacitance and has the size, scale, speed, and things that it needs, and especially to your point, 90 times whatever data is out there, 9,000, whatever. The point is, like, it can.
Yeah.
Right? It can permute all of it. We cannot. There is a functional limitation to how much any brain in the world, even Mr. Einstein, have the ability to contextualize and understand things in that way.
Ironic, and I'm just going to take a moment, ironic that this device improved upon, it was designed and built around the neural network, the way that our brains supposedly line up, but yet we're not tapping into full capabilities in the same way.
We do enjoy alcohol as humans.
Well, some of us.
Look, it's what makes sure that we stay at human level. Go to superhuman level.
I just don't want to wind up being AI. That's it, right? Yeah.
That's
Not a
why.
problem.
That's why.
Right? That's the real reason. That's the real reason. It helps keep us tame.
Yeah, but when you think about AI, and maybe it's worth talking about, right? Just from what we've talked about, all LLM. My brother is an AI researcher, scientist, and has been working on natural language processing and machine learning and machine vision for years and years and years. And one day he was doing a DARPA Rising presentation, and one of the things he presented, this was a few years ago, is AI isn't the way we think the brain works. He says, that's a magazine bin, just because it's a bin that someone put magazines in. And some of those things are real problems for that, right? To your point of this, it's just going to get to a token, go bin, right? And so it's stuff like that. And he says, we have to train these things in very specific and linear ways, but it's not thought the way we think of thought, right? In that regard.
So we'll shift gears a little bit. So we've definitely been talking about some of the scary stuff. Let's talk about kind of where, from all of your perspectives, you see both, your business, your realm kind of changing to combat a lot of the scary. Who wants to kick us off?
I don't mind tackling it. I think if you talk about what are the cybersecurity risks, let's just focus on that, just for me. Look at some of the major breaches. Cisco, right? You have a password being synced in a browser. You have a password of, let's call it secret 123 to just be agnostic. But things like that, those are just hygienic functions that people don't dedicate the manpower or human power to. They don't think about. Those are things that you could just literally build into products very easily and start managing some of these things. So I think the hygienic impacts of this will probably make a bigger impact on cybersecurity than what we think makes an impact on cybersecurity. Better AV, better this, better things. Maybe just lock the front door, bro. Like maybe just lock the front door and that kind of stuff,
If it's just a multiplier on our ability to educate, right?
Sure.
That becomes
feedback to a human as it happens, things of that nature.
You've got an NPC now engaged in
That's so good.
in training,
100%.
right? You've got an NPC now engaged in training of.
You could have your company mascot pop and go, Matt, did you just store personal health information in your C drive?
Yes.
We saw it. You
Why
probably
not?
shouldn't.
You return.
It'd be Clippy.
Let's say nega Clippy.
Yeah.
Nega Clippy.
Nega Clippy.
Nega Clippy.
Did you know that our very own Jake Farghese was part of the Clippy team?
I did not.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that I tried to bring up Clippy when I was talking about GDAP. I was working on the GDAP advisory. I said, we should call it GDAPy and have it pop up and guide it through it. Dude, like cold stone eyes immediately by everybody. Like I thought I was going to get stabbed.
One of my favorite memes was when AI was first coming out. Somebody referenced Clippy and they pulled out, there was a Clippy mascot.
Yeah, it says, I am your father.
In a closet somewhere, just like kind of wrapped in thin plastic. I was like, that's so good.
That's bad.
That's so nostalgic and like hits home. Yeah.
But Jason, you've been kind of quiet on this topic. What's your thoughts, man? Since you're actually, in the MSP world.
There's a lot of use cases for summarization and correlation, right? Like I think that is a spot where we will quickly see a lot of value. Alerts are noisy, right? I think you guys have a sign over there. So it was something about 80% alert noise quieting.
Yeah.
Right. But I think in the end, you can start to try to use AI to do a better job of determining what ones a human needs to look at first.
Yeah.
Right. It still makes enough mistakes that, I might want to still spot check some of the decisions it makes.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
But you should be able to do summarization, and especially summarization across multiple tickets. Right. When you have an incident, you can get a lot of noise really quickly, and a lot of you got AV alerts firing over here. You've got SIM stuff going over here. You've got it may be 60 tickets that end up in my PSA when something like that happens, right? So being able to pick the correct ones, here is what initial access looks like. This is how they moved, right? Like using AI to create the path around that based on all that ticket data, I think would actually be really huge.
Yeah, because when we would have an incident, we would always do a ticket review, obviously, to see, did we leave a password reset? Did we not put on MFA? Or the things that would be almost instantaneous. I mean, at least for that search, if you did it well, 100%.
I mean, other things, right? It's, I already hinted to, when we're doing assessments and stuff like that, just being able to, right, when I go into a new client that's been with maybe a not so good MSP, or they had somebody in-house running IT, you're usually juggling dumpster fires, right? So it's like, which of these things is the most important thing for me to actually start to try to de-risk them? Mm-hmm. I think AI can also help a lot there, right? It's like, okay, considering all of these vulnerabilities that exist, which ones would you recommend I attempt to fix first?
If nothing else, it could build defensibility in those choices, right? Like you're doing the due care by actually working with some system. The system gave me there is definitely a benefit to that from that regard.
Would you want me prompting one of your technicians? I should say me. Would you want ConnectWise prompting? Not Kyle. The Kyle bot is not going to exist. But just go ahead and warn you.
It is now.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you want something like ConnectWise? And again, this isn't typically ConnectWise product conversations. We're not engaging. We're just saying line of business application. Would you want the line of business application prompting the user when they transgress some basic tenet?
Yeah. I would long term. That's my thought. I mean, it's my vision for it. Yeah. Right. Because if you can guide the human behavior in the way that's near to the point of action, we can solve a lot of those. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a way, just in time coaching is way more effective than trying to do it after the fact. So 100%.
And that's so basic from recognize this pattern of communication, mark it as bad, make noise when it happens.
And I think that there are products in this space that are doing that, or at least attempting to do that. But yeah, I mean, those are good features to have.
You sparked me on something, Slagle, when you were talking about that, looking back at multiple sources and tickets. You can even find these type of systems being used to say, let's say if in the ticket I put that I changed the password, I did this, but there is no correlative information from something tracking that password change. You could actually find incongruencies in ticket statements, right? Because you're talking about summarizing tickets. What if they're BS?
Yeah.
What if the ticket's been validated by some type of validators that come into that space? So you could see value in checking, let's say, a Lion Guard or something that's doing posture management of some sort, and say, oh, yep, we do see that change. This is correlative. We're good. Or no, we don't. Okay, what happened here?
And there are all sorts of use cases out there from, I'll call that quality assurance standpoint.
Good call.
Also, yeah.
Awesome.
Make sure I get a copy of this.
Yeah. Kyle's like, I'm taking all of your ideas. Thank you.
Why we're here, buddies. Why we're here. We're all right.
Like, so that whole rising tide lifts all 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly why.
So let's talk next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Slagle, I want to kind of start with you on this one, man. What are you looking to do as far as AI in your business within the next 6 to 12 months? And what do you see kind of both the implications and the benefits being of that?
I really want to try to figure out how to get all of our documentation inside of an LLM, right? And not the embeddings model that you use to do that now is kind of gross and doesn't work as well for me. So I might go down the road of seeing if I could actually train something up. Because I think on the tech side, the ability to ask questions based on our contextual documentation is actually really cool. And it's way better than search.
The holy grail.
100%. Yeah. And I think we can get there. The other thing, I'm looking for interesting sales use cases, right? Like I got another one for you. Sell could very much help you write statements of work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like the system prompt to do that is not that hard.
Yep.
And it's a thing that business owners struggle with doing, right? Their statements of work are terrible. I will warn you that it will always exclude on-site labor, even if you told it you should do on-site labor. Apparently, the bias is just really strong against it.
But it's not like I don't have data for that, right? So,
Why include it when you have AI right there? It's like, no, none of this.
Yeah, I explicitly told it that on-site labor for this workstation replacement was included, and it still added it to the exclusions list.
So what's funny, Jason, I'm thinking back to like my project management days, and this is back in the virtualization, and do I have enough storage? What about RAM? What about compute? Do I have licensing? Those were all manual checks someone had to do to make an SOW, right? I had to go check and see, does the hypervisor have enough storage space? Can I back it up? Those are all manual checks that would be almost instantaneous for a quote in an SOW, right? If you were able to get the information in a way that's, I think your challenge might be normalizing your documentation and normalizing things that they're usable enough in that way. But if you could get there, boy, an SOW to move this hypervisor to the cloud would give you the VM sizes, the accounts, the storage. There'd be some human aspect, but you could gather a lot very easily in that way.
I suspect we'll see like more than a 50% reduction in the amount of time it takes to create proposals.
Sure. And the accuracy rate going up to some extent.
Other than the deterministic.
Yeah, so other than the hallucination, it's like, yeah.
So
There's an interesting aspect of this, quite unique to our space, is that as we streamline efforts, we reduce the amount of workers required to accomplish that, which in
profit.
In our world changes the landscape of how we engage in a financial model with our customer.
Yeah.
So like as we see this technology come out, like there's going to be a trade-off on, I'm leaning close to the reduction of the workforce conversation, but the reality is we're streamlining the effort. So there's a math that gets done, and quite honestly, we've got so many opportunities from a product perspective, so much data, so much capabilities. We've actually looked at all of them and ranked them and said, hey, look, we can't go this route because it's going to impact the users, right, at this point, right? We hold
the
back.
same question at the same time, because I was actually about to ask that exact question.
I'm not sure that the compute costs a lot less than some of those employees at the moment.
At this point, right?
Yeah, the compute cost, the electricity cost, right? I believe that a DALL-E, the amount of energy required to make one image on DALL-E could make you a cup of coffee, right? Like, so
do you want to make an image or do you want a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Some days it's coffee.
You have to give up coffee if you're...
So I think that that is a cost that people need to consider too when all this happens. And I don't... everyone is like, oh, AI and automation are coming for our jobs. Well, that's always been the case.
Yep.
Right. Always. But the thing is it doesn't really come for jobs. It just changes that.
That's correct.
Yeah. Right. Like it changes. And honestly, in many cases, the jobs that it ends up displacing aren't super desirable, highly sought after jobs anyway.
When was the last time you needed a typist, right? Like, it's just, I think it's changed less than, hey, your jobs are going away. It's really, again, you think about even the Industrial Revolution.
Yep.
Like, it's that continuous change. And AI is really just the next step in the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
Now, how do you see your team's jobs and roles changing over the next year or two with AI as it continues to advance? Because let's face it, the rate at which AI is iterating is insane.
Yeah. I don't think I would be surprised to find any real reduction in workforce. But what it may do is hold off. Like, we're getting close to the point now where it's like, do I hire a second dispatcher? Right. And I don't think I'm gonna. I think that there's enough AI tools to help that it's a force multiplier. So now it lets that dispatcher I have do more work with less time. And so now I don't have to hire a second one of those.
Now, do you see that happening with, like, for example, your tech team being able to handle more tickets and you basically being able to grow your business without having to hire more additional techs every time you take on a new customer?
I think that's the goal. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, especially when my tier 1 techs are expected to solve like 80 to 90% of their tickets based on stuff in the knowledge base. Yeah. Right. Like, if AI could surface that knowledge base article in the ticket when it came in, their life would get a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. You spend a lot of time talking to MSPs, non-cybersecurity related. What's the number one problem they bring up anyways?
It's human power and ability to get people that are good.
They can't find people.
100%.
So
the other thing I don't want to miss, and I know we might be running short on time,
we're good.
is that when you think about the forces that are playing, everybody always wants to focus on one thing. It's not one thing. It's multiple things happening all at once. Well, think about this. Jason, how many Exchange servers are you still rocking?
0.
Okay. How much work did it take to do an Exchange server by comparison to managing an Office 365 or Google? Like,
Oh yeah.
we've been commoditizing. Not only have we been commoditizing, we're normalizing, meaning that that script works there and there. The only difference is a GUID and a secret. And that starts meaning that graph is graph, and Google's access is Google's access, and Dropbox's APIs are Dropbox's APIs. And so when you start thinking about the convergence of the LLMs needing normalized data that makes things possible and easy to understand, and we're normalizing the data, and we're commoditizing away the workforce and the plate spinning, right? I was told don't use the word plate spinner in my former organization. When I asked why, he said, because of all the plate spinners, Matt. But the point is that you start thinking about it, that is already happening. And these are going to be force multipliers that speed this up, that makes this, like your ASIO, be way more valuable because of normalization as time goes. As you start seeing that happen, to your point, it's going to free people up to do more, to do different, to be different. And adding back to your Industrial Revolution point, there was a TED Talk that compared tractors to creating porn. I won't get deep into that point, but it was basically saying that in the turn of the century, you had 17 kids because you needed them to be on the farm and make enough food for you to live. But after the tractor came, people moved to the city, the industrialization was happening, and you leave people. And what they said, and what she said in this talk was, humans have two things that are always happening. A unbridled greed for more, period, and imagination. And if you leave people in a space long enough, they'll go, man, I could sell this. And that's what happens. That's what the workforce change does, is we'll do new things, we'll be, and in this specifically saying the commoditization of what our tech work is, well, how does an MSP find value? If we're commoditizing everything off to an RPA and a script, it's being better about making their business better. It's being better. It'll be putting LLMs in their world and making them more effective and working out and making them more able to deliver to their clients.
And then the customer doesn't care, like the ancillary stuff you do of keeping the systems running, that's
So the
table
stakes.
stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like the customer doesn't care about that. They care about other ways you can add value.
Correct.
It's ironic we've come full circle in this industry, right? A lot of MSPs started as VARs and integrators
Yeah, and consultants.
and consultants.
And here we find ourselves.
And here we are.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
No longer managing the infrastructure in the same way that we thought was so critical.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right on that. And, here's the next challenge I kind of want to surface for us to kind of wrap up on. And Slagle, I want to pitch this to you first, because again, you are the MSP here. You're the one that's actually doing a lot of, that work with your customers. Your customers are going to want to consume AI. Like they probably already are.
I'm trying to avoid it.
How do you see that role changing for you? Like, what do you see as your customers are starting to go, hey, I want this AI thing.
Yeah.
What is your role? Like, how do you see that changing for you? And what do you need to put in place to be able to support your customers? with that?
So right now we're leading with education. So the ask at the moment is everyone wants to turn Copilot on.
Yeah.
I have been cautioning people against turning Copilot on for a number of reasons. That most notably, most small businesses, they took their on-site file server and just lift and shifted it to SharePoint without doing any data review and any permissions review.
Ask me how I
It's
know.
all terrible. So Copilot, it to your point, it distills information, right? I may have access to a document with salary data in it, right? But I'll never find it.
Right.
But if I can ask the AI questions and it can just consume it, then the discoverability of data that you shouldn't have access to becomes a lot higher. So we are doing a lot of education and other things around clients saying like, hey, if you turn this on, we probably want to do a full data review. We probably want to get tagging. We probably want to limit
Sounds
who
like
has access to it. 100%. And some of it, then the customer's like, sounds great, just do that. But the problem is I can't be the custodian of your
can't
data.
do it in a vacuum.
Right?
You have to
this
participate.
is your data, right?
yeah.
And I don't know who should have access to what.
Amen.
So this isn't a problem that I think we can solve. We can only guide them to solve it.
But you hit a key point, Slagle, and that is we as MSPs, and okay, I'm recovering, but still,
You're recovering.
we did not get in their data.
Yeah.
We made sure that they could get their data. We helped them have their data. We didn't live in their business and go, oh, crap, Johnny shouldn't have access to this data because right? We didn't do that. I believe if I was to predict, we will get deeper in their business. Even back to your VAR point,
100%.
VARs weren't deep in the business. They just kind of, right, depending on the VAR. So when you think about it, this will be much different. This will be significantly more. And I think AI will aid us in that. What if you could ask me to summarize the last 12 business decisions that this company made and how they, right? Like you could start getting into understanding track records. I think it'll drive the MSP deeper in the business. It'll be way stickier, and you'll have a lot more actually being a part of delivering that end client's success in my mind.
I mean, honestly, I see tools too. Like part of the challenge is like you flip that on and everybody has access to it.
Yeah.
How do we flip that on and have it evaluate itself and say like, hey, where's the risky information here?
Yeah.
Right. Like, that seems like an obvious application of the tool in itself.
Yeah, MSPs are doing data projects on this to try to solve that.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, and I present it as this, where is there a fruit from a poison tree problem? Meaning if I start with this giant Copilot and I turn it on, there was bad data and I've now removed it. Is there fruit from a poison tree? Do I have something that this model has ingested, tokenized, and have information on that I've destroyed, yet still creates that knowledge or wisdom that we're trying to find? And so I don't know the answer to that part, but I'm definitely, that's one of the concerns I'd be wanting to think about.
It's such a challenge, like because they want to drive forward. You want to drive them forward with technology.
Yep.
But here's risk and compliance and all the reasons why compliance is a good and bad thing, right? Preventing them from leveraging this valuable component. Like it's almost second brain technology, right?
Yeah.
With being able to, like you mentioned wisdom. How great would it be to be able to like engage in conversation with your past knowledge creation, right?
Talk to me 20 years ago. And
right.
Yeah.
So there's really cool capabilities, but you have to walk that line. That's, again, it's interesting just in this conversation, like from the productization side, from our engagement with MSPs, on this side, I'm seeing like all the capabilities without considering the true compliance and risk at the end user side. Like that's real world. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I think you want to kind of add to that because I saw you having those gears turning. I could see them.
It's a tough thing, right? Like at one's hand, it's really cool, and I want to help all my customers be really early adopters. But at the other side of it, it's really still kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And I personally, I have Copilot on my account now. I don't find it that useful. I don't know.
It's great at summarizing meetings.
It's great at summarizing meetings.
So for me, it's great for again, like you said, getting the gears moving. Yeah. And like, hey, I'm kind of stuck on this thing.
It's done some neat things in PowerPoint. Like you can basically feed it an outline and it will generate a slide deck from it. It does cool things like that, but it needs actions. Like you said, it's like, hey, can you just delete all the emails from vendors out of my mailbox? That would, if I could type that into Copilot and it happened, my life would get so much better.
All vendors that clearly aren't talking to me like they know me and have actually done this as a sales process. Like, you know what I mean? You could get kind of discerned in that.
I had a great use case. I was on a field trip with one of my kids. Somebody asked me to help them in a short timeline review a PowerPoint.
Okay.
And I was like, great, I'll have an hour and a half when I get home to do this. So I said, hey, outline this PowerPoint for me. Give me all the highlights. That's cool. I did the prep work.
Yeah.
So when I sat down, I could get right to it. Right.
Yeah.
And something that would have been difficult to do, I would have had to read word for word, and not be able to accomplish what he asked.
Sure.
Like that's, again, there's so many new paths ahead of us. And like you guys said, it can be kind of scary, but I think it's also going to be one of those things where as you continue to evolve, as MSPs, as recovering MSPs, as just in the industry, it's really taking the best parts of it and implementing where we can. Like you said, right now, it's a lot of spaghetti against the wall sometimes. I think probably as we start to see, models mature, stuff like that, I think we're going to see less spaghetti and more kind of focused. Hey, this is what this one thing is really awesome at.
And also, once people get the basics they should have been doing, a lot of this gets easier. The only reason we're all scared of this is we know how big of a bomb our clients are sitting on, if I'm candid, right? So that's the big deal. Is I think we're really only dealing with a temporal point that will change. And once we get the data set and we get people used to that, and to your point, Jason, the biggest problem of that is customers think that's the smart guy or gal, they're going to handle it. No, you're a participant in this. You are a data custodian. In fact, how many times has anybody as an MSP that's watching this ever said to their customer the term data owner, data custodian at all?
I mean, user is still a 4-letter word.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair. Yeah, but
they're still users.
This is the delta of having to get, I think this is more of a revolution of understanding that every business has data. It's worth something. We need to protect it. It needs to be cataloged. It needs to be understood. And it goes along the talk I've been giving for the last year or so of showing that we as humans adopt a technology first and then let future me deal with it.
Yep.
Right. And what is happening here is we're looking at future me right now when it comes to data and data management. And that's what we're going to fix out of this. And it's a great thing. After that, more of the spaghetti on the wall will have less impact. And you can have spaghetti and you can see what sticks. And you can find those that win. And I think the MSP's role in the future will be some of that iteration.
You should have your spaghetti on a plate, not on the walls.
Like, not spaghetti guy, weirdo.
So
This has been great. Can I ask the last question?
please do, Kyle.
Yeah, because I think we need to wrap up. 'cause
absolutely.
People have stuff to do.
Yeah.
They've got
Camera guy's got things to do.
Yeah,
this afternoon.
They've got LLM models to play with, and build in their own environments. So with that, what excites you about AI in beard management?
Ooh, that's a dang good one.
Right? Because I mean, honestly, the thing that really gets me going with this topic is the personalized care and like nutrition.
Oh.
Like this AI now knows me.
They can
and
look
knows-
at this and go, bro, you're light on the moisturizer
Whoa,
right now.
more iron, dude. Like
Yes, exactly.
a little bit more iron,
Oh.
and it'll be so much. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Mine would have been, I wish I could have seen, like without the beard, how I look. I might have taken a different path on shaving my beard for charity, right? Like AI could be useful for that.
I mean, Matt, I literally offered to like create the counter campaign for that.
Yeah, you should have won. It was my dog didn't kiss me for 3 weeks. Man. Like, it was really rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I got nothing.
Nothing.
Come on,
Just
man.
out.
You can't play.
All right, I'll go back with another one. What about how to shape this thing? How to guide it? What if I could have like a grow model, right? It's just it's a grow model.
Are you gonna trust?
As the baby beard in the group here, I'm very excited for AI to help assist me in growing the large, majestic beard.
Growth tips. Growth tips.
Exactly.
Yep, it's all about growth tips.
It's I mean, it's pretty easy. You just don't shave.
This has a time effect. It's not work.
It's kind of good. I love it.
Are you gonna trust the AI robot to do a little trim? I don't.
Oh, no.
Listen, man, you're talking to a guy that has eyes that hadn't pointed in the same direction for a very long time in my life. Robot probably does a better job at lining this up than I would.
All right.
For sure. But not with a razor blade.
Now with the razor.
Not with a straight razor. I don't know if it might have some
Safety razor. Safety razors only.
All right. Well, guys, I appreciate all of you joining us. This has been an awesome conversation. It's been a lot of fun. So for those of you watching, again, it's kind of that whole, make sure you're talking to your parents about, internet safety, but make sure you're talking to your customers about data safety at
these
this
topics.
point.
Yeah.
Talk to your customers about these things because this is where they're going to have stumbling points. You're going to have stumbling points because they're having stumbling points. And the earlier you get ahead of this, the less you're going to be playing catch up. So I think that's one of the big points we got out of today. So keep going on, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.